I want to read a comment now from these are under the category of neighbor observations. I've noticed huge dust clouds being emitted from the recent grading for home sites. The builder is not continuously keeping the dirt wet and it's blowing freely throughout the neighborhood. Is there a risk?
Which building site?
I don't know.
It's Runkle Canyon. And it's gamma, are they manning gamma camera levels as for cesium 137 for polonium or anything?
The contaminant that was mainly found at Runkle was strontium 90, which wouldn't show up with the gamma detector.
Okay.
Ironically, the cleanup of the contaminated soil at San Susanna would be done under much tighter circumstances where they would have to keep the dust down because of the potential contamination. Some of you may know I've been troubled about the Runkle Canyon situation for years since Supervisor Parks obtained documents from the developer of their radiation measurements. That's really, let me break through this for a moment. You're frustrated about what's going on, and I am too. And the problem is the questions are coming to us when I think it's the agencies you really want to ask your questions to. We've been fighting for years to get the agencies to deal with this stuff. So maybe what I'm hearing from you is that the next meeting we should find a way that the agencies can answer those questions and you can hold them accountable. The woman who left said, it's criminal to allow this to happen. Well, my group.
Well, I mean, when we don't know from these agencies that you question, it's a very difficult area. I understand that this is difficult to quantitate, difficult to see how far it's spread out, but there have been some sites on Runkle Canyon, I believe, that have been tested for radioactivity. Is that not correct?
Oh, yes. They found elevated strontium 90 was the developer's own test.
So they're excavating very deeply there. They're dumping some of the soil right next to my home. And I don't know, and it's frustrating. There's nothing I can do about that except to move out of Simi Valley, which I don't want to do. I like where I live. And this is causing major concern in their community.
Do any of the agencies want to say anything about what can be done to try to keep the dust down and reduce their concerns?
No, not that we've been able to do, but we're a working community.
The agencies are here now, so with any of them.
Can you sue the developer?
No, because we don't have the money to sue the developers. The developers are deep-pocketed. They can lure us up forever.
I want to make a statement, which is
I'm suing
we have
them.
heard many of the agencies talk to people in the audience as if they come regularly to technical meetings, as if they come to meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, as if they go up onto the hill. That is not the case for many of the people here. If you're a community member, you live near Runkle Canyon, you're a community member. If you are a mom and you need to schedule a babysitter so you can come at night, you're a member of this community. If you need to take time off work so you can fight traffic, that was the beauty of the work group. That was why we had these things quarterly. And they were discontinued, and now we've been able to bring them back quarterly.
I'm sorry about the frustration.
Oh, look,
okay.
I've worked on this for half my life. I mean, a third of a century,
it is a frustrating
all of us
problem.
are immensely frustrated. So I share your frustration, and I hear it as a great suggestion. For years past, the agencies used to be up here, and you were able to ask them questions and hold them accountable. They worked for you. I hear you asking that we do that again and soon, and that you really try to be able to find a way to hold these agencies
responsible.
And so I am going to ask the agencies who, for this meeting, have sat in the audience, to next time, and we'll hold one soon, be up here, to give each of you enough time to be able to press them. I mean, the only way democracy works is if there's sunlight. And we have to have them be able to not only answer your questions, but take responsibility for the stuff they're doing.
Some questions are unanswerable because
but
we
then
know
don't answer the unanswerable ones, but the answerable ones they should answer.
Right.
Okay.
So we hear you. Okay?
Thank you very much. We share your frustration, the amount of energy and effort and challenge and obstacles to being able to just be here tonight.
And to your patience.
Our patience has been tested In waste, sir,
You don't have the slightest idea
we are on
what it took
your
to get
side.
this meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so, what contamination could occur in the home of a worker from chemicals or radiations brought home? What could this do to harm? What kind of harm could this do to other family members?
You know, I think that
What kind of harm?
the issue is that, you know, contamination brought home. I mean, obviously, I'm not familiar with respect to guidelines, you know, if a worker has dust and particulate matter on them, how much decontamination they have to have before going home. But that's where the issue is, what you bring home on your clothing, on your dust, you know, again, your shoes, etc. So that aspect. I don't feel there's probably great risk if you know, if a worker is, quote, decontaminated and then goes home. Just being next to their family and loved ones is not going to you know, present major risk there against the dust and the particulate matter they bring in.
Okay, this is a question I think, Mary, maybe for you, from Daniel McGrath. I'm wondering the depth the sodium gamma detector was able to penetrate underneath the soil surface.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And what we determined was approximately 6 to 13 inches below the surface.
Can
So 6 to
13 inches. And it's approximate, it depends on the soil.
half a foot to a foot.
Okay,
But part of what we did was real quick was we did do these borings, and wherever we did the borings, we did a sodium iodide detector down the boring. So every boring where we took a soil sample, we actually did sodium iodide detection all the way down the borings. Didn't find too much in the regular soil samples, but in the areas where there was buildings and structures, we did find a few anomalies. And all of that's in our report.
okay, thank you. From Aileen Matthews, why have no studies been done to determine how many increased incidence of cancers may have occurred in the San Fernando Valley, Simi, Los Angeles?
Well, there have been. The study done for the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry looked for a 10-mile radius comparing 2 miles to 10 miles. The LA, or I guess the State Cancer Registry years ago, had looked at the Los Angeles County census tracts close to the facility and found an elevated level of urinary bladder cancers. So there have been some studies, but I have to basically tell you that it's really hard to do studies of the non-worker population. Workers wear radiation badges. So an epidemiologist can compare the health outcome for someone who had high dose to low dose. All of you in the public, you don't wear radiation badges. So the best that ATSDR was able to do was to use distance from the site as a surrogate for exposure. So there have been some studies. We've posted Dr. Morgenstern's work on the website. We can, if you want, post the bladder study as well.
Okay. The next question is for NASA. This is from Supervisor Linda Parks. I don't know that she's here anymore. She says, why is NASA trying to sell its property at the SSFL before it is cleaned up? And if it's sold to the Santa Inez Chumash, will the tribe be required to clean it up to state and federal standards? A question from a county supervisor.
I'm sure I can answer all of that. Some of that's above my pay grade, because I'm not aware of it. But I can say that that NASA isn't selling. It's the property's in excess, right? Declared excess, and GSA will take receipt of it after we clean it up. After there, the disposition of the property is GSA, and I think so that would be Jim.
Just to clarify, that's not really quite my understanding. GSA says it's trying to transfer the land now, and has repeatedly said it wants to do that before cleanup is complete, and that's what's caused Supervisor Parks to get resolutions to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, the LA County Board of Supervisors as well. And obviously people are somewhat concerned given the fact that Chumash have a casino north of Santa Barbara, and this would be extraordinarily valuable land for a casino in the LA area. But no, GSA's position in writing on its website is that it is trying to sell that land now, and that it believes it has the authority to sell it before cleanup is conducted or completed.
And I believe that NASA is still responsible for that cleanup, even if that land transfers.
The issue is a tribe can claim sovereignty and be exempt from all of that. That's the concern that the county legislators have expressed.
And again,
It's above your pay grade.
not above my pay grade, but out of my visibility.
Okay.
Okay, Dan, this may be one for you, maybe for John, I don't know. How much iodine-131 was released from the SRE reactor accident in 1959? Any thyroid uptake by members of the public?
Nobody knows. The radiation monitors went off scale. That means that there was so much radiation that the device couldn't read it. We don't even know if iodine got out at all. It could have been captured by the sodium or plated out on the cold surfaces of the pipes, but it could also have had a substantial amount. In a reactor accident, iodine becomes like a gas. And as I showed you from the drawing, it can go into that core cover gas and then be pumped out. Some experts have estimated that the upper number could be as high as I indicated in that film, of about 240 times what got out of 3 Mile Island. But 3 Mile Island is a very small number. The official number is 15 curies. So you could still have had thousands of curies, which would be something of a big deal. Iodine tends to concentrate in the thyroid gland and can cause thyroid cancer. So half a century plus since it occurred, no one has the slightest idea how much got out. That was one of the bad things. We didn't have monitors set up around it because no one assumed you could actually have that kind of an accident. And we had it and we didn't.
Well, we do now.
Yeah. So we don't know. Well, good news, iodine-131 has an 8-day half-life. It's dangerous for about half a year. You don't have to worry about iodine-31 today. Bad news is if you were around at that time and you got some iodine into your thyroid gland, you can get the cancer decades later even though there's no iodine left in it.
Okay, and we have unfortunately time for one more, which is a kind of odd question, but I'm trying to pull them from different groups. And Dan, perhaps this is one for you, but I don't know if anyone can probably answer this. Do they still plan to open Glow in the Dark Park, as I've named it, for the SSFL site?
That's not really funny, but
Let me explain what's behind the question.
Funny.
The Boeing company, as I mentioned, has sued to block the cleanup law, and it refused to sign the agreement that NASA and DOE did sign. It has argued it would like to declare the land uninhabitable forever and restrict it to day hikes and picnics, make it into a park. The reasoning behind that, and we would love to see it as a park once it's cleaned up. I think huge numbers of people would agree with that. But the reason Boeing wants to declare it a park is that if you can argue that people are only on the property for a few hours a year for a hike, let's say 8 hours a year, there's 8,760 hours in a year. That means you can leave 1,000 times more contamination. And that's what's their motive, because they would save a lot of money. It doesn't do any good for the people who live nearby. They're still living in homes. So there is still pressure to have them exempted from the cleanup requirements and leave vastly larger amounts. I've done some calculations about it, and none of the radioactivity would be cleaned up at all. And NASA itself estimated about 90% of the contamination of their land would not be cleaned up if they could use the park land, the cleanup standard.
And it doesn't do anything to water, right?
That's the point. The site leaks. So if you don't clean up the source, the leakage continues.
what is the ground? Is the rock sandstone? Is it a porous
Fractured
rock?
bedrock, yeah. And that's the problem. It's very hard to clean up and very hard to model because it moves through the fractures.
Okay.
Look, one last comment from me. You do not know what we had to do to get this work group back. You really don't know. And There's been a huge amount of effort to not have that happen. We did it for you so that you could have a chance to hear these things, but also for us to hear from you what you want. I'm hearing that you want a chance to try to hold the agencies accountable. And so we'll be asking them the next time to be here, up here, and to have you have a substantial chance to try to push them on those things you want to. I mean, you pay their salaries. So thank you all.
Thank
we
you all very
vote.
much. We're
These
going to
people
need to
vote.
move out. We will have conversations. To the agencies, I want to thank you very much for being here. It's important. The community is larger than just the people who go to the technical meetings. The community is very large.
Thank you all.